Hey golfers, I'm Drew Maholda, Second Swing Golf here on the Cleveland and Srixon Tour Truck, joined by Michael Jolly, the Director of Tour Operations here for Cleveland and Srixon. Michael, first of all, thanks for letting us hang out here, learning some stuff about your guys' operation and how you work with tour players.
Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, this is fascinating because I think there's in our fittings at Second Swing. Obviously, we're working with not quite these types of players, but right. It's still the club fitting as a concept has just grown so much, where it used to just be a tour thing and now it's everybody, and so we get to learn a little bit from what you guys do. And I'm also just curious about your process in general working with these players. So first of all, just talk to me about like what the typical week looks like for you guys. I mean, right now we're on a Monday out here. Is it an arrive Monday and you stay the whole week? I mean, what's the schedule look like for you guys?
Most of our guys will get in on Sunday, or rep-wise, we'll get in on Sunday night and stay till late on Wednesday and head home Wednesday evening. So here for all the practice round days.
Got it. Okay.
Generally the way it looks. And then the trailer, will go from tournament to tournament and get here early Sunday and set up and do it again the next week.
And so in terms of the, obviously we're here and actually we've been seeing, some stuff being built already. So what does that look like? Say, every week I got to build XYZ for this player, or is it kind of a week by week, request process for a player that might submit something to you guys and you guys got to fulfill that type of thing? Yeah,
probably more the latter. And it kind of depends on the time of the year too. Like to start the year, there's a lot of the West Coast. You get varying conditions. There's a lot of seems like always a little bit of more tweaking than normal early on in the year, and sort of gets settled in as the year goes on. But typically out here, it's a lot of maintenance. It's a lot of loft and lie checks. Weekend, we have guys that do that every single week. Bring their clubs in and get lofts and lies checked. Fresh wedges.
Yeah.
I would say most of the guys that have been on tour for a long time, from a fitting standpoint, you don't do a ton of that with a lot of clubs. It's maintenance and making sure stuff stays in spec.
Okay.
And then if some guys see some issues crop up, then that's when the fitting part will take place.
Yeah. So, and I do want to ask you about some of the new products and kind of how those have been adopted on tour already. I mean, for one, I'm really excited about ZXi with the drivers and the irons. But just in terms of, you guys already have a pretty solid roster of players out on tour, on staff. I know there's also been a lot, said, and you don't have to look very far to realize that the stuff's being played by non-staff players as well. But what is that? Kind of talk me through the how you guys navigate working with these players when maybe some of them are pretty particular about their equipment. Sometimes I don't want to say the word headache, but there's probably some times where there's a lot that they're asking of you guys and trying to keep up with that versus maybe some players that are a little bit more relaxed in kind of the demands.
Yeah,
on the equipment.
I think the particular part just comes from these guys are really, really good.
Yeah, right.
And they're very sensitive, probably the wrong word, but sensitive to a half a degree on a lie angle here or half a degree on loft and making sure the spin is in a certain thing. Yeah. So when the new product comes out, it's very much them sort of putting the new set through their tests, through their paces, and making sure they match up to their yardages and their spin numbers that they're used to in the launch and landing and all those things that they know what they need to play at the highest level. So I think there's certainly guys that are on different ends of the spectrum there. Some guys looks good, feels good, I'm ready to roll, looks like it's my number, and then there are other guys that they'll spend weeks with their irons and they want to get rounds in and check number after number, and it's just guys have different processes for being okay, ready to go, when they got to go play for real with it.
And so are most of these players, like nowadays, probably with all the launch monitors and stuff, is it a lot more numbers based when they go test something out, or do they still kind of, is there sometimes that you notice, hey, this ball isn't quite flying a certain way, and they see that with their eyes?
I think there's certainly two types of players, but I think aside from just the numbers, I think everybody has a window they're looking for. That if they don't see the ball there, an adjustment's going to have to be made.
Yeah.
And I think they can. Those guys' eyes are pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times we use numbers, at least in the way we go about it. We like to get a real reaction, not a hit one shot, look at the numbers, hit a shot, look at the numbers, because those guys can adapt and change things to try to get where they want to. It's just sort of second nature to them to try to do that. So a lot of times we try to do it without the monitor, get a good idea on, hey,
Yeah.
it looks like it's flying, it's in my window, feels good,
Yeah.
going through the turf the right way. Let's put a TrackMan up.
Got it. Yeah.
Quad
so it's
up
kind of a
and see.
two-step process.
Yeah.
Like one, look, feel how it launches and flies quick, how it looks with the eyes.
Yeah.
Pass that test. Okay, then let's try to see what the launch monitor says.
Exactly.
And go that route.
Yep.
So another question I had was just about everything that's on the truck. So obviously there is, you guys have your club heads and the product in that regard, but there's also shafts and grips. Like, I mean, do you have like I don't know if there's a way to quantify it, but like how many different shafts, how many different grips that you guys have to have on the truck just to make sure that, if there's a request from someone, you're able to kind of fulfill it.
Yeah. As a general rule, we like to have wedge shafts, iron shafts that are in all of our staff's bags. So, if we have, 12 to 20 players in an event, we know that they come in, we've got what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And grips the same. We have all of our players' grips in there. And then obviously smattering of other things that aren't necessarily in line with what our guys are using, but we have them if we need to. And the other part of that is all the, with all the other trailers out here, and the shaft companies have their trailers. So if we don't have something, generally they're here to help us provide that. So
Got it.
We keep a lot of stuff on here.
Yeah.
It holds a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's crazy to step in because it's a lot bigger on the inside than it looks from the outside. There's a ton of space in here. You guys obviously maximize it and kind of have to keep up the operation. So now I wanted to ask about the new products and how the adoption process is going. So specifically talking about the ZXi with both the woods and the irons, and then also the RTZ wedges too, which really impressed by those so far. So talk to me about, we'll start with the drivers and just kind of how, that testing process is going, working those into the bags of some of your players. What's been kind of the best feedback so far? I know it's early yet, so but what have you heard so far and seen in that testing?
I think we're seeing really, really good ball speeds, which is something we've sort of grown accustomed to with our driver. I think where we've really seen improvement with our guys is this new line's the quality of the miss hits.
Yeah.
Guys aren't seeing the drop off in heel and toe strikes and high and low strikes. So that's been a win for a lot of guys, and we're seeing adoption. Shane's already put it in the bag and loving it. We had I think we had 7 drivers in play last week at Honda, so it's going really well.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun to see, and just being out here as long as I have, just to see the growth of the product over 10 years or so. Like, generally when guys hit this new one, it's like, this is the best Srixon driver I've ever hit. So that's
pretty good feedback, right?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah,
really
and
good.
then in terms of growth, you mentioned that. Obviously, I think the irons are really taking a big step forward, just in market share as well. A lot of ZX Mark II, and then now ZXi have been, certainly with our fittings a second swing, it's been a really popular choice. Our fitters have loved them. So now with this new ZXi series, what have you seen in the testing with your players as well? And then also, I'm curious just on the combo set, possibilities as well. What are you seeing is kind of most common blending some of those models together?
Yeah, it's really a tricky thing on tour when you've got a product as successful as Mark II was for us, as happy, like your players are happy across the board. We love it. Every player was in Mark II irons, and it's like, okay, it's time to make some new ones. How are we going to improve it without, like, you don't want to mess it up, right? You got a really good thing going. So we really stayed true to the shape, and obviously didn't touch the V-sole. Wanted to continue with that technology because it's sort of the calling card of that. Guys love the way that the club gets in and out of the turf. But we did make some improvements in the way that club feels, and especially in the ZXi 5s. So essentially, guys, like, it's my iron, but it feels better.
Yeah,
and I think it goes to the turf maybe a hair better. So, it's a small improvement, but one that our players identified right away. Like, it definitely feels better.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
which is saying something.
That ZXi 7 feels fantastic as someone who has already ordered a set myself.
Nice.
I wanted to ask too about the ratio, because I know there you have a blade set too that Srixon offers. Z-Forge or Z-Forge 2. Is how many players are putting that in the bag? Is there a ratio that you have of players that are going, say, with that player's cavity of the ZXi7 versus the the Z Forge? And you've even mentioned, I mean, you mentioned that a lot of players are playing the 5 and kind of the longer irons. So how much play is the blade getting versus the ZXi?
I'm looking up at our list, our roster here. I think it's just Hideki that plays the blades.
Really? Out of, I mean, there's for those who can't see this behind the camera here, there's 15 names there.
Yeah.
And so you got one playing the blade. So I think that kind of speaks to maybe to this, and maybe you've noticed this in general the last several years, is this kind of this trend of the blade maybe not going away entirely, but certainly it seems like a lot more players are opting for that forgiveness piece.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the numbers and stuff, and seeing that there, working with TrackMan Quad, and seeing that, hey, like miss hits with this are really consistent.
Right.
Like, why would I need to make this harder on myself? And I think that's where the combo set that you mentioned comes from, is, players realizing that in a 4 and 5 iron, maybe even a 6 iron, that if I can launch it up with ease like the ZX5 does, it feels really good, and it transitions nicely with the rest of the set with the 7s. Then why would I not make it as easy as possible on myself?
Yeah.
To hit more greens with my long clubs. So
right. Yeah.
And we've seen that with the vast majority of our players.
Yeah. I mean, visually, the ZXi5 and ZXi7, the blend is so seamless. Just looking it down to the dress too. So obviously that makes it a lot easier to do. Now I wanted to ask about the RTZ wedges. So, because the short game testing period is probably, or your process is probably a little different for players versus, just hitting a few full swings, being able to hit your draw, hit your cut, and that's kind of it, right? With a short game and a wedge, there's a wide variety of different shots you got to hit. Bunker shots, flop shots, chip shots, pitch shots. Like, so how does that work for the players? I mean, sure, it's probably a little different player to player, but like when you're, offering them, these sets of wedges, I'm sure it's probably a whole day process almost to get that down.
It is. What's interesting about this product is that I think tour players, I've said this to quite a few folks, I think tour players are not that different from your customers in the fact that they're drawn to something that looks cool.
Sure.
And that wedge is certainly a new look for us, super fresh and clean, and our guys are drawn to that. Like, they want to hit it because it looks cool and different. And so when you have a player that's excited about trying something, it tends to go better. And they certainly, I think from a process standpoint, it's just sort of trying to match bounce that they've played in previous models, and building something up to their spec, matching what they had before, and sort of letting them sort of start their process. And some guys want to start right next to the green, some guys want to sit farther back, and sort of right away it's this wedge feels incredible.
Right.
And there's a story there, and a technology that makes sense, and it's easily relatable, so they love the way it feels. And then everyone sort of has a couple of shots that they know that they have to be able to hit, they depend on, right? If it's this low driving skipper or a more open face flopper type shot, like everyone sort of has a couple shots that they know they have to play, and so they'll go and sort of make sure they can cover those bases, and then they put it all around the green and move back or move up depending on where they start.
Right.
So everybody's very different when it comes to those. And then and then it's fine tuning, maybe a little grind here, or trying a little bit different bounce here, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know that was the part I was going to ask about, was like I'm sure every player, there's certain sole grinds that are available at retail you can order, but then I'm sure at this level it's shaving some extra things off or making things a little bit more unique in that regard.
And we do a lot less of that than we used to. I think the lineup that we've come up with sort of covers a lot of bases now. So we still do it for some guys, whether it's a little bit changing the way a leading edge looks, or a little bit of toe or heel relief, but it's certainly not as extensive on the grounding as it once was.
Yeah. In the last, as we start to kind of wrap here, I'm curious about again, we've talked about the process and working with the players and getting something in the bag, but is it, let's say, one of your players comes in and they want to build a fairway wood, right? They're looking for a specific, maybe want to try a different high lofted fairway wood or something like that, right? Is that something where you might build them 2, 3, 4 different ones to go test, or is it, here's one with this shaft, this, these specs, try that, hit a few, and then if you want to tweak, we'll refine it. Like, how does that work? Is it, I know back in the day, before the, adjustable hosels, it was probably, here's all these options together, but how's that work nowadays?
I think it depends on, from my standpoint, there's always a little bit of an interview process. Like, what are we seeking here? Why do we want to build a new 5-wood or 7-wood? What are you trying to solve for? And why does the current setup you have not solve for that? So if it's just that you're wanting to try the new one, then let's sort of, and what you have is working, then let's sort of use this spec and maybe have a couple of shaft options. But if it's, I hate what I have, I've got a sort of clean slate. I think it's probably a couple of heads and a couple of shafts, and sort of figure out what's working and what's not working. And then you sort of, that's the luxury of having a trailer out here, is we can always come back and try something new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's really cool to be out here and see, what goes on inside the truck here. So, Michael, it's been really cool to get kind of the insight and some of the behind the scenes of the operation from Cleveland Srixon. So, golfers, make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments on what we've learned today from the process. Michael, thanks again for joining and giving us the breakdown here. This has been great.
All right, thanks.